Why is everyone painting Grimdark?
What a crazy thing to ask. The difficulty is with going Grimdark is knowing when to stop.
Maybe it's becoming a bit of a fad.
Ooh.
They're painted in a way but it's fitting with lore.
Knowing the lore of the thing that you're painting is so important.
This podcast is brought to you by us. If you're a fan of the show and you want to support us, then you should know that we have dropped some really cool merch on the Siege Studios shop. We've got several shirt designs with this really cool graphic on it, which has loads of cool painting nods and references. I've been wearing mine all of the time for months now, and I genuinely get compliments constantly from people who have absolutely no idea what Warhammer is. The shirts are really nice, high quality cotton, and everything is in stock and dispatched by us. None of that print to order nonsense. So if you want to check out the designs for yourself and see the other merch that we have on the shop, head to the link in this episode's description or go to siegestudios.co.uk/shop. And if you use the code POD10 at checkout, you'll save 10% and you'll get a free sticker pack with your order. Grimdark. It's all the rage at the minute in the miniature painting hobby. So we're going to be talking about who it's for, why it's so popular, and is it actually the best way to paint your miniatures? All of that, and we're going to be debunking some myths as well. Don't forget to stay for our regular segments like Question of the Week, our listeners' comments, and don't forget to listen to the end for our hobby hack. But first of all, we've been having a little bit of a debate on recent episodes about the pronunciation of chitin or chitin, or however you pronounce it. That's what we've been rolling with. Everyone has been commenting it is chitin.
It's chitin. Yeah, fine. You heard it here. Like, I will never, ever call it anything else.
You'll never call it chitin or chitin or whatever it's called ever again.
It's called chitin, isn't it? So I'll just call it
chitin or chitin or whatever it's called.
Whatever it's called, yeah. Well, at least I know that. I'm never going to collect Tyranids now. So yeah, never going to say it again. Okay. So yeah, but thank you so much, everyone that correctly. I love the amount of people that put like direct vocal translations and like.
My favorite part was how terribly people were explaining that it's chitin.
Yeah,
like they were like trying to do it phonetically, but almost making it more complicated.
I had someone message me directly on Instagram with a link to where you push a button and it played the actual pronunciation of it.
That'll do it.
I was like,
just do it on Google, don't you? Just type it in it.
Yeah.
Some sort of robot voice.
Yeah.
Chitin.
Well, also in reaction to a previous episode, everyone was very, very happy that Joe had returned.
I know, right?
So what is your rebuttal to that, Paul?
Sucks to be you guys, because I'm here today. Richmond's out of the cage again.
Yeah, we're making substitutions on the show like football teams at the Euros at the minute. So it's
still winning though.
Yeah, still winning. So yeah.
Well, actually, this comes out after the next game, so we won't know.
Still possibly winning.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna hope that we do. So yeah.
If not, show me lost.
Yeah.
I have a question for the preamble.
Yeah.
What is some hobby content that you've been consuming of late? Any YouTube channels, any books, any what's like your vice?
I have been watching a lot of episodes about sort of like Space Marine chapters and stuff, just to kind of like help me with stuff that I'm doing for the exemplars. So I've been watching loads of stuff about different chapters, like
nerdy.
Yeah, and really into the lore aspect of it massively. Just so I can make something a bit unique for them. Because what I'm doing is every model that I'm going to do for it, I'll do a post and I'll write a bit of lore about that character or that whatever for that post. So I've been using that.
Oh, I saw you've done that. You started like an Instagram just for the chapter, right?
I have, yes.
I'll link that below.
Exemplars of Siege is the channel that I'm going to, on the channel, is the Instagram account that I'm going to do all the updates for the chapter. It's going to be like the tome of where all the information is, or any artwork or any like kind
when
of
you can't afford a wiki page,
I know.
you start an Instagram.
Start on Instagram. It's easier. It's been really good actually.
And then that way, no one can adjust it for you either, can they?
Exactly. Yeah, no.
These guys love cheese.
So I've started that, which is good, and I'm just starting to work through some of those models. So yeah, it's been good.
Well, I'll tell you what I've done, hobby-wise. I got a copy of the Leviathan novel.
Mm-hmm.
I put a bookmark.
I didn't know there was a novel.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
I think most of the when they release the game, so there's a novel to go with it. Anyway, I got the novel. I put a bookmark in it. Open the front page, and then I put it back on the bookshelf. I will read it because I think it looks quite cool. And other than that, I've just been painting Azrak the Annihilator.
You've got you're on all the trim at the minute. Trim fest.
So much trim. There's all the potatoes and the veg to do.
You don't know trim until you've done a Gulliman, mate.
No. This is schoolboy numbers, isn't it? Compared to
Gulliman is pretty serious when it comes to trim.
This is because I'm a noob. This is my Gulliman at the minute.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I think maybe you should do this model and then paint a Gulliman.
No, I'm not doing that. Not doing an ultramarine. Good heavens. No,
you got Ad next door. Perfect spot of advice for painting it.
True. But then, no, I'm not doing it. No.
Much like painting a blood angel around you, it's too much external pressure for getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I shouldn't really say this, but I didn't quite enjoy painting the red armor
Yeah.
on Azrak.
Good.
And I
We know
almost,
where this is going. We know where this is going.
Yeah, I almost broke, and just because I got loads of spare parts, I thought I could just put a little Space Marine together and just paint a blood angel, couldn't I?
You could do
I
that.
could have a
Paul.
go at it.
You could do that, Paul.
But I thought, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not. I'm going to finish this one, and then I've got something else to paint afterwards.
Cool. What's that? Or do you not want to say?
Well, thanks to George, I've got a jackal.
Oh, okay.
Gene Stealer Cult jackal.
Yeah,
to
they're
paint.
awesome. Yeah.
Yes, I love the little the quad, the sort of scrambler type bikes.
Yeah, yeah.
I think they're pretty cool. I think that's a nice little project to do.
Yeah.
So I just want to paint one.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
wanna paint one
Aliens
crazy
on
colour.
dirt bikes. What more do you need?
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So I thought I'll have a go at that. So that's like a little treat after I've done. But however, right. So I'm painting Azrak, the main body, which is kind of a huge project. So I kind of want to, but I'm really taking my time with this. And I want to do all the OSL within sort of where the head goes.
Yeah,
the green.
yeah, the green, yeah.
But I'm kind of nervous about doing the head. It's almost like another project on its own.
Yeah, you've got to treat it like
I
that.
haven't even undercoated yet. It's on a little paper clip, sort of sat there in a sponge looking at me like, when are you going to paint me?
Yeah.
So I want to get the body done and complete first, and then I'll do the head. But he kind of scares me a little bit because I think it's like I see two main focal points of that model, like the head and his like power chain fisty claw thing.
Yeah, it's a bit of a unique one, isn't it?
So so looking at the head, it's like people are going to focus on the head.
Just treat it, like you said, as a complete separate thing and spend your time and attention on it singularly. You'll get a better result if you do that rather than just...
Yeah.
And also, access-wise, it's quite... Because it's a Terminator, it's got the cowling above like the over the head. If that
No,
makes
he
sense.
has. I don't think he hasn't.
Has he not? Has he not got the Terminator army? Doesn't he got the
Yeah,
bit
but
above his-
I think his head is quite exposed.
Oh, okay.
In the
Oh, right.
image.
Yeah, I can't remember. I mean, I know the
Needs to
model,
be-
but...
This might be a hot take.
Yeah.
How about a test sub-assembly?
Yeah,
So instead of a test model, test sub-assembly, and you get like just a regular, because everyone's got a bunch of Space Marine heads
Yeah, I've got
kicking around.
loads,
Yeah.
Have a couple of practice goes on some other Space Marine heads.
I could do, yeah. I was thinking about it. Yeah.
Has it got a normal like ball socket?
He has,
Yeah,
yes.
so you could easily just do a test head and then stick
Yeah.
that in, see what it looks like. So you
Yeah.
get your test your colours just for colour contrast.
This should
against-
just give you a practice for like painting that small area.
Yeah.
Like decent
Yeah.
level colours, tones, things
Because
you want to get.
I'm gonna paint all the flesh and then I'm gonna whiff the eyeballs and he'll look weird.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
And then I've got to do some OSL on the back of his head, I guess, like the green.
Yeah, do that. Well, do that obviously
Yeah.
before you put the head in.
But
but
yeah, I'm gonna take my time. I'm not gonna rush it.
Yeah.
It'll be all right.
You'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Oh, and I've chickened out of doing non-metallic metal for all the trim.
Fair.
I'm not doing that. No.
You're like, oh, this is going quite well on the red arm. I don't want to ruin this.
Yeah, don't want to ruin
I'll
that.
stop here.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can still add interest in metallics and still glaze like tones and shadows and colours
Yeah,
onto it. So
but
I actually suggested to Paul doing a sort of non-metallic-esque effect with glazes on
yeah,
top of
yeah,
regular metallics.
100%. Yeah.
Well, I spoke to George about it last week, I think it was. And what I realised was when I was painting it that if I do non-metallic metal, where all the shadows and the highlights are going to fall, it's not going to match in with the red armour.
Yeah.
Because I haven't painted the red armour in that type of way. Where,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, so it's not going to work. It's not going to look right. So I thought, I'll
You
have
can
to
just do it softly if you want. Like you can just do a bit of softly. If
Yeah.
you've gone solid and stark with like, if you've gone solid with the red with no tonal variants on any of the panels and stuff, you can just do it softly. Maybe around things like the rivets on it, because
I
then
have
that way.
tried to do some tonal sort of stuff because it was undercoated black. So at the bottom of the panels, it's much darker, and then it goes up to a brighter red. So
Yeah.
there's a bit of a trend. I mean, you might spot that from
Just
2 inches away. But
just work it around the rivets and things. Then,
Yeah.
you know, so in that way the shadow kind of increases around those bits, which kind of shows that they're a little bit sunken a little bit on the
Yeah.
trim, and then it just adds a nice natural shadow, and the rest of it can be as bright as the rest of the armor.
I think people are afraid of contrast when it comes to true metallics,
Yeah.
which is a bit confusing to me because like people go really, really high contrast on like the armor stuff.
I know, right?
And then they'll do like gold trim and it's just like one very... People often shade it, but I think you can go... If you look at like the way non-metallic is done, it's almost like all the way down to black and then all the way up to white. I think you can you can still do that with true metallics by adding a lot of glazing
Yeah,
and stuff.
there's drastic change in contrast, isn't there, in non-metallic?
I love doing that on metallics, like adding tones and shadows, and like if there's like red cloth in between the legs, doing a little glaze of red on the inner thigh just to show the reflection of the material. And
Yeah,
stuff.
I think
like,
I think it'll be
like,
all right. I think it'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
It's really easy to do with like transparent or even like translucent like glaze layers on top of metallics, because it's got that metallic pigment behind it.
Yeah,
it will still have that shine, so it looks right usually.
It'll be all right.
I like thinning down inks like to glazes.
Yeah, I've never used inks, so I might try.
Inks on metallics is really interesting because like they've got such high strength of pigmentation. You have to dilute them quite. You literally put a tiny bit of ink on you. I use a lot of the old GW, really old like black ink, red ink, all that stuff, and they are like strong as Ribena.
I do remember those actually.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're like they're
strong as Ribena. I hate it when he slips in these
strong
little...
as Ribena.
Yeah, they are. They literally don't drink it.
We need a time to Jamesism like counter in the corner of the episode.
Strong as Ribena.
They are. Yeah. But like you can just put a tiny bit on the palette, dilute it down like Ribena, and then you can literally just use
Ribena. Why are you using anything else?
Yeah, coming up next week, Paul paints with Ribena. Yeah, that could be the next
well.
challenge on the show. Yeah, like, you know,
that might be an idea.
But no, I inks on it's really good because inks tend to dry glossy or shiny. Obviously, if you reduce them down and dilute them, they'll still retain that sort of glossy kind of tone, maybe not as much, but I think that works really well on metallics. It helps make the metallic look shinier because it's got that glossier kind of tone.
Going to contradict that. I prefer a matte finish for the shading on the metallics because it adds like kind of this increased contrast of not only the color but also the finish. And then the finish looks brighter because it's got that sheen to it as well.
100%.
Personal preference. I mean, that's both are, one isn't right or wrong.
I'm actually going to throw something in there. You are quite correct. What I was saying is obviously I like, for example, on metallics, I use a lot of chestnut ink and a lot of yellow ink, and I tend to use those on the brighter areas. And then, like you said, with like the other things, you can shadow using like Rhinox hide, or you can use scorched brown or things like that, and you can just shadow the areas, and it does give you that finish property difference between the shadows, which are matte, and obviously the glossier areas, which are your brighter colours.
But obviously, these suits of armour are thousands of years old. I suppose when they pop home, they get the old Mr. Sheen out and give them a buff up, do they?
Well, if you're a blood angel, you're cleaning your armour to get rid of the thirst. So
nice. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Should we do listeners' comments?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, why not? Are there any?
Yes, there's many.
Cool.
Quite a few.
Skellebob says, I'd have called you mad a few years ago for batch buying paint, but lately it seems like every paint brand changes their formula every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's definitely the smart option.
There's
a concerning amount of support for James's paint hoarding habit.
I don't really encourage grey shame, but paint shame I do encourage. I would rather have a lot of stuff. The thing is it's really important, I think, when you're collecting an army and you want longevity of being able to collect that army and paint it all the same.
Consistency, I know.
It is. I've had it. It is really frustrating. Like you've got a pot of whatever colour that you've been using on your army for X amount of time. You bought that a year or two before or whenever, and then you go and buy a new one and it isn't the same, and that is frustrating because then I don't know. It depends on the person, obviously, and individually how much it's going to bother you ultimately, I think. But yeah, like for me, I'm a little bit OCD when it comes to it. If you're doing consistency, and if it's an army and it's supposed to all look consistent and they've all got the same, like take for example the leather pouches on your models. If if the brown that you use and you've used it for 3 years, and then you go and buy a new one of that one, and then it's slightly different hue or the finished property is slightly different because it's got more X chemical in it or whatever, that will niggle me, and it might.
But then it's not so bad because it's leather, and all leather is different.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that probably isn't the best example.
I guess it's more about if you've already done it on like 80 models and they all look the same, and then you're doing like an additional 20, they're the odd ones out. I guess.
Did we have this discussion before about what type of leather they're using? Where are they getting all these cows from?
Space cows.
Yeah, space cows.
They're just getting any random animal whatever planet they're on and just skinning them for leather. So all the leathers are going to be different anyway.
It would be. You're quite right. Maybe that wasn't the best example.
Take your
metallics.
Getting deja vu.
Take your armor or whatever. Like generally speaking, like that for me. That's the thing. So I had that experience, and then I thought, right, well, from now on, whenever I start a new army or I'm doing a new project, and it's going to be a progressively long project, I will buy X amount of them so that I haven't got that worry of, the colour's going to be different. And that's how I end up with over 1,000 odd paints or whatever it is, And I know I joke about it, and but I'd rather have that. I always see paint as like a library. That's the way for me, best way for me to explain it. I don't drink, and there are wine connoisseurs out there. You can call a paint connoisseur if you want to call it anything. Or
I'm getting raspberries from this one. Ribena.
Yeah, but I suppose I'd much rather have like loads of paint, because then you could. I find choosing the paints for a project one of the most enjoyable things, I think, because that's like the foundation of everything that you're going to do on the model, and I don't know. That's why that's the problem I've got. I've got.
Yeah, but you're not talking about having like a library of paint though. You're talking about having a library and having 6 books, but having 97 copies of each of them.
This is a paint from 1993, and I've got 12 of them.
Yeah, I mean that is very true. I've got lots of paints.
I know you have.
Literally, it was like a comedy sketch. Like the listeners are probably going to think I'm making this up. We was having a conversation in the office yesterday. I was having a conversation with Joe and James. And then Paul just appears out of nowhere, hands James this little baggie. And I'm thinking, like, I thought James was straight edge. I didn't know he flew like that. And then I have a look, and it's, what is it? Lo and behold, more paint.
From the 90s.
Yeah.
Exactly. More retro paint. Just what this man needs.
Yeah. Like when
Scorpion green, wasn't it?
Scorpion green, blood red, shadow grey. What a colour.
Shadow grey. That's a great colour.
You'd see him backing me up.
I know. This is the time when I was getting into it, and all these paints, they just get me in the feels,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but whenever you make one of these orders of these old retro paints, there's a little part of them that's really hoping they're dry.
Yeah. No, I've
got a hole. I've got a hole in that one.
I've been quite lucky with the ones I get. But the thing is,
how were them ones the other day?
Perfect. They were.
Were they sealed?
They were not sealed. They were opened, but they all had like 80-90% paint in them, and they were all like wetter than Niagara Falls.
Wetter than Ribena.
Wetter than Niagara Falls. Yeah, I love old paint, and the thing is like those pots of 93, they flow and work so well.
He says it like it's a wine. Pots, the 93, the 93
He holds it up to the
Scorpion.
93 vintage. So yeah, but it was like a comedy sketch. You're quite right. Like, I've been quite good recently. I haven't actually ordered much.
But it's constant. Like, it sounds made up. It's not like a one-off occurrence. It's all the time.
Yeah, you can just imagine. A wine connoisseur sort of spins the wine around the glass. He's doing that in the pot.
Yeah.
Holding it up to the light. Look at that.
Yeah.
The clarity of this.
Yeah. No, I think the best out of those 4 that I got the other day, that I've not got an old Space Wolf Grey, the original Space Wolf Grey.
That is a good paint.
And I know there's a lot of like people don't like the bluey kind of like Space Wolves or whatever, but for me that's like, it's such a big nod to my childhood, like blue space, those blue sort of purpley.
I remember painting all my Space Wolves with that.
Yeah,
sitting there on the windowsill when I was 15 or whatever.
Yeah, but in summary, and going in reply to Skeleton's comment, like it's like I would always advocate doing that if you're starting a new project, because you're quite right, they do change. Things do happen. And we're going through we're going through quite an era of like lots of. Seems
like everyone's doing it at once.
Yeah,
in the last like 5 years, it seems like all the main manufacturers of paint in the miniature painting hobby, God, that's a mouthful, are all changing their formulas, it seams.
Yeah.
And it didn't really seem like it was much of a thing that it didn't seem like everyone was doing it at once before.
No, do you know what? It's really interesting that the only one of the ranges which is the oldest is the current Games Workshop range. And they tend to change the range. I think it's like every 10, 15 years, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the washes and the contrast is obviously a newer thing, but the actual core paint range, I think, is pretty unchanged.
The funny thing is that in 20 years from now, James will be buying all the paints from now.
No, I'll still be using 93 vintage.
So, Joe, don't worry, he's been pre-planning for this because he buys 8 at a time.
Why do you think I've been hoarding up? Like this is the thing. Like I must admit, like I think the color which I will, and I've got to say this. I know I said that the current GW range is like one of the oldest now, with obviously all the new updates on Army Paint, like Vallejo, like scale range has been around quite some time. But I still think the GWs hold up really well across the board compared to the competitors that are out there. And I think the saddest thing for me will be when Mephiston Red as a colour, they stop making it, because that paint is like exceptional. Like it is one of my favourite current range GW paints. And there isn't actually a mid-tone or like a warm mid-tone red, or like a true a vibrant warm red that in the old paints compares to that. I'm going to say old paints. I'm talking about the 93, 94 ones. Like if you think like a scab red, or maybe like some of those other
scab red.
Yeah, they don't really. It doesn't have the warmth and vibrancy of Mephiston. It's an amazing mid-tone red that is perfect for doing all other reds on top of it and stuff.
Yeah.
That's the one that I'll miss the most, I think. So I will be hoarding that up.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Expect
Well,
to see a few more of those turn up.
a suitable username, Born in Crimson, says, James's hobby space must be tiny because it's covered in all sorts of Rube Goldberg hobby contraptions. Jam jars full of water, giant pallets, ice cube trays, and now a saucer with a paper towel in it.
Yeah.
I imagine it must be like stepping into the Warhammer version of Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory.
And don't forget the bottle of Ribena in the corner.
I would not advise eating anything that's on my painting desk because it's not like Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory.
Fish bowls as well. We didn't mention that one.
Fish bowls, yeah. I mean, there's quite a few bits and bobs in there, and that paper towel in the sort of like the dish thing is still on my desk. Yeah.
Did you not hear the fish bowl thing?
I
Joe?
don't know what this is.
It's to clean the airbrush while you're working. It stops. Stops tip dry while you're working.
Yeah,
it means your
sure.
airbrush lasts longer. So
The fish bowl is because James, for some reason, decided a regular water pot isn't good enough. He takes a giant IKEA candle the size of a bowl.
Oh, I see.
Guts that out and then uses that as a water bowl.
Well, I guess
I don't gut it out. I don't go into IKEA like some crazy maniac and stuff.
Give me the biggest fish bowl you've got.
I burn the candle and then the candle gets used.
So
Just
many
sitting there waiting
steps.
for the candle to burn.
See, this goes
Come
back to Born and Crimson's comment about how it's all Rube Goldberg-esque because you couldn't just go out and buy a large dish. He goes and buys a candle. He's adding a lot of steps that you didn't
just
need.
a random candle burning for 50 hours waiting for the jar to be available.
Okay, fine, yeah, but I just find a use for something, and rather than going out and buying something, I found use for something that was in the house already. So
Yeah, sure. I do that as well. I've got
that's the reason
jam
why.
jars and stuff.
That's the
Hundreds and hundreds of jam jars.
So you could be a jam connoisseur.
No.
Is it Bon Maman?
Bon Maman, yeah.
What?
Paul's not experienced the Bon Maman. Yeah, no. There's a brand of jam called Bon Maman, and I've always
It's like an
used them.
old,
Yeah,
Oh, right.
it's an old podcast reference.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Over my
I'll
head.
sort you out. I'll give you a jar. It's
Okay,
fine.
cool.
Yeah, it'll be full as well, so you
forward
can
to that.
enjoy the jam.
Yeah, and then use the jar after.
Yeah.
Darren Schmidt says, I've also heard the term mini cellar before, which I think is apt. You never know when you'll build the mini, aka drink the wine, but when you do, it will be the opportune time and not a moment too soon. I think the shame in Pile of Grey Shame comes from having spent the money but not done anything with it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Collecting dust.
Yeah,
Cool.
I agree.
We foreshadowed this with the wine cellar.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with buying a kit and then having it on like in a pile for a while. Because the thing is like kits do go out of production. It does happen, and sometimes there'll be a part or there'll be a certain head or a certain thing. So having, if you really love it, like for me, in the most obviously biased statement ever, like the current Sanguinary Guard kit, I've probably got about 4 of those still just in my Grey Shame, purely because there's so many bits that are amazing to then put on other models and like just weapons and stuff. Like if you bought an Intercessor squad or you bought like an Assault Intercessor squad, I want to have a Blood Angel Thunderhammer or sword or weapon or whatever on that model rather than just the generic one. So having those kits just sitting there for parts and bits is better. And obviously you could theoretically buy the swords or the bits individually. That's fine. There's obviously a premium on buying those parts, but just buying the kit and having it always there is good. So yeah, I hugely advocate. I'm not trying to implore people to buy loads of stuff. I am really, I guess. But yeah, I think having a library of stuff like paint or like models is great for you. Great for just and also if you get bored of what you're painting, if you're in your comfort zone painting the army that you painted 500 figures for, it's nice to just have something and go, I'll paint that
different.
today. You know?
I think it's fine if you're chill about it and you think about it in that way. I think when it becomes a problem is when people are buying stuff to scratch an itch
For the sake of buying
just for the
something.
sake of it, rather than like, well, you could have painted this stuff, but they're like, well, I don't really fancy doing that, so I'll just buy a new thing and I'll get the same level of satisfaction.
I often buy things and thinking, I'm definitely going to paint that.
Yeah, we've all done that.
And then you just don't. So I try not to. I try and sort of do the project I'm working on because I'm not an army painter anyway. I don't play the games or anything. If I fancied painting something, then I'll just have a little hunt through and see if I want to fancy by painting a single miniature more than an army of things.
Yeah.
And that obviously helps with having piles of Grey Shame. But I have still got a little pile in the corner.
Yeah.
Sat there. Waiting patiently, and I keeps giving me the old side eyes. Like, are you going to paint me or not?
Yeah,
it's like, probably not, mate.
That's why you put it in the cupboard so it can't give you the side
Yeah,
eye.
I need to just tuck it under the sofa. Don't look at me.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got a handful of kits, but my general like everyone, but my general rule is like I'll buy stuff as and when I want to paint it. So if I buy something, it's because I have intent of painting it like imminently.
Yeah.
It's like going food shopping when you're hungry. You buy all the wrong stuff, don't you? You buy the snack stuff instead of the things that you should be buying. So
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is like instead of cooking a meal, you go to the shops and buy something else, and then you get home and you order a takeaway.
yeah,
That is very true. That is very true.
Yeah. And then keep it under the sofa and don't eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least grey plastic doesn't go off, I suppose. So then, you know,
True, it's always going to be there if you fancy doing so. And I suppose, I don't know. And then there's always that little surprise 2 years down the line. You think, oh, I forgot I had this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to paint that. I fancy doing something completely different to painting blood angels all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to paint anything else.
Yeah. I mean, like for the last month for June Stealer Cult, like that Abominant model, I literally bought it. I was like, I love this model. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It must have sat in that drawer for probably a year. And then obviously we started doing the monthly challenges, and I was like, oh, it's perfect. I've wanted to paint that model. Now I have a reason to it. So rather than having to dash out and grab something and then probably pick up 5 other things that I want to paint as well at the same time, I've literally, it's good to have that vault of stuff.
I do a similar thing, but I won't buy the kit. I have like a little wish list notes app in my phone.
Yeah.
And if there's something I fancy or I think is cool, I'll write it down just so I don't forget about it, because we're at the point now where GW has like 800 model kits and you can't remember them all.
Yeah.
I'll make a little note of them. And then if I ever think like, oh, I'm not sure what to paint, or like, oh, I've got some, some loose change, I want to buy some bits, then I'll have a look at the list and be like, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember I wanted to paint one of those. I'll get one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah. But I've got a little bit of your grey shame, haven't I? The Jekylls.
Yeah, great solution for this, turns out, James.
Yeah,
anything you don't want, just give it to Paul.
Give it to someone else.
Yeah, but I think that's a really good thing you can do with your friends in your painting circle. Like you can, I've always said about having painting evenings and having stuff like that, rather than maybe doing like a gaming evening or whatever. Having like that ability to go, oh, have you not painted one of those? Oh, here's one. It's a great way to then give someone that like little project to work on and stuff. I think that's a really nice thing to do. And ultimately as well with like the Cellar or like the grey shame, I hate calling it grey shame as we spoke about the other week, but
pile of potential.
Yeah. With that pile of potential.
So nice.
The thing is that you know, everyone says about investing money into it. Well, the good thing is Warhammer does hold its value really, really well. Like as a product, it does.
I wouldn't consider it a good investment per se, but I would say
gonna buy a house with that set one day.
No,
I wouldn't buy it with the intent of it being like an investment or anything like that. But I would say generally, I'm going to agree with you. You tend to be able to get your money back.
Yeah,
at
least. Yeah.
For current range, 100%. I do. I do. I'm interested in old Warhammer, like sealed Warhammer. That's something I am interested in, and like that does hold its value and grow and increase its value. So, like being honest, it does.
Yeah. This is not financial advice.
No, caveat, it's not. Don't try. Yeah. All I would say is that the older stuff, and as time passes, the sets that do get discontinued, they do because of scarcity. It's just a supply and demand thing.
Yeah,
because of scarcity, they do retain their value and increase in value. But this is over decades. Do you know what I mean? So you're not going to
unless GW decides they're going to do like a made-to-order run.
Yeah,
unless,
well, there is that as well. Yeah, you're not going to be buying a Lamborghini and a mansion with Warhammer. Let's put it that way. But
sunk that battleship then.
Yeah, but that is the one saving grace of it, is that you might lose a couple of quid or whatever, or break even. But you'll always be able to go and stick it in a trading group or stick it on eBay and get a good return on it. So
I think it's a good thing to have a little like spring clean, go through your pile of potential, and see if it's got potential for somebody else.
Yeah,
either giving it to a friend or saying,
help a poor person out, and give them some potential.
I think it's good to condense it down though, and like you can, and then even if you want to put it back into your own hobby, like if you're looking to buy some new models, why don't you have a look through your pile of potential, see what's in there that you're probably never going to get round to, sell a few kits, and then use that money to buy the new thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I've done that before. Like I had a guard. I've tried doing the guard army, like about 30 times over the years. And it gets to a point, I'm like, oh, I can't be bothered now. I'll just sell it off. And then that funds your next project. So it does.
That funds the next guard army.
Yeah. But the Mornians will not be sold on. I can tell you that for a fact.
Okay. Requiem Wraith says, I can now attest to some advice you've given previously. I'm entering a small painting contest in a couple of months, so I'm giving it my absolute all. It's by no means exceptional work, and I cannot see me even placing, but it is producing blends and highlights I didn't know I was capable of doing. Absolutely the best work I've ever done. It's proving very eye-opening.
Yeah. I think because your mindset, and it does come down to mindset, which is something I always talk about in classes and also on this podcast. Like if you are thinking, I'm going to paint neat, sharper, smooth, better, the best I can, that directly translates to everything that you apply to the model with the brush. And it means that you're being more critical with your eye at what you're looking at, so that you are trying to get those things on the model.
In my opinion, it's the only reason you should enter a competition is to push your skill and become a better painter.
Amen.
I think that the trophies are, maybe a nice thing to get at the end. But I think, say for example, with the Golden Demon, only 3 people are going to win those trophies out of a category that might have say 300 people in it.
Yeah.
But good news for those other 297 people is they all became a better painter too.
Yeah.
Everyone had the same reward in that sense. You might not have gotten a trophy, but everyone, regardless of whether you placed or you didn't, everyone has improved as a painter.
Well, I agree. I think painting competitions are a celebration of miniature painting. There's lots of people that say that, and I do 100% line myself and agree with that. And I think, speaking from experience of entering and having various outcomes or whatever, I do think that the ultimate goal of it for me, as I've said in other episodes, is just pushing myself. And if I do get that cherry on the cake and I'm lucky enough to get any kind of tangible thing for what I've done, it's great. I in the early days, like everybody, when you first start, you're like, I want to win, and I think everybody has that. That's the initial thing that you kind of do to try and enter a competition. You have the aspirations of winning, which I'm sure everybody who enters does. Right in their mindset to it. But I think as you spend more time doing it, and as you see the other caliber that's entering into competitions, and there are other things like, for example, before we go too deep down the rabbit hole, there's personal bias of judges. There's obviously number of entries. There's people that have been obviously painting longer than you, that maybe are further down their journey. So there's all things that are involved with whether you do well or not. It's not just physically what you do. So I think remove all of that other stuff from the process and just focus on, is this the best thing I've painted? If the answer is yes, that's the reward. And I think that's...
if you gave me the choice of, you can place and win the trophy, or you can not place, but you will have learned a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying this. I would always take the latter option. I've literally never won a painting competition, and I've entered 3 or 4 now, and I've learned so much invaluable information from doing all of those, and even prepping for coming up in the next couple of years. I've already started painting some bits.
Yeah.
And I've gotten so much better as a painter. That to me is worth way more than a resin statue I can put in my cupboard.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say it from both sides of the fence. I agree wholeheartedly with you. I think because I have been very fortunate and I have won a few things, I think that for me, that part of it, as in getting better and the experience, is always going to be the most important thing for me as a painter. When you do, it kind of rewards... It's the way I say it is, it's the reward for all the hard work and growth that you've made through doing that. That's the kind of thing that I if I do get something, whether it's a finalist, whether it's placing or whatever, it's that's the reward for the lessons and for the hard work that I've put in to get to that point.
Don't get me wrong, I would like to win a trophy, as would everyone.
Yeah, of course.
But I think going into it just for the intent of winning one is a mug's game.
I'm not really aligned. We spoke about it before, and I don't want to bore people too much with competition painting, because I know it's not for everybody, but I would definitely say that as an arena to improve, it's the best place to do it, and also you'll learn the most lessons and grow the most through doing it. And I'd always advocate that, whether it's one down a local shop or whether it's a more established competition or whatever, it's just a nice environment to just focus the mindset, which I think is ultimately the most important thing if you're looking to progress. It is what is flowing through you onto the brush and coming out on the model, and it's the mindset that steers that.
Yeah. Talking about your local GW store, they have little painting competitions every month. Yeah. Even on a very basic amateur level, they're still great because they give you a theme every month to work towards. You've got to have there are sort of little rules and things you've got to have. And even at that sort of basic level, it still gets you thinking about, doesn't matter what level you are, if you're new to the hobby, it still gets you thinking about that process of painting better. Yeah. And it's still a great sort of entry into that sort of world, I suppose, if you want to go down that route. Yeah. But I've entered a few of the local ones and, keeping in with their themes. And not particularly to win anything, but it sort of gets you out of your comfort zone to paint something that you don't normally paint. Mm-hmm. But also, like you say, it gets you thinking about pushing yourself a little bit more. Yeah. On an very amateur level. Going back to something a bit more prestigious, I suppose, like Golden Demon. Many years ago, I did enter Golden Demon twice, 2 years in a row. And it was never my intention even then to win anything, because I knew, like you said, there's hundreds of people. It was a completely different game back in the late 90s anyway. But my goal was always to get on the video, it to be played on video. So your miniature would get a sticker.
Yeah.
And then you'd get put on the turntable, and I think it was like 30 seconds or a minute. It would be displayed to like the 10,000 people that were there.
Yeah.
That was always my goal.
Yeah.
And one year, like the second year that I entered, I actually got on the turntable.
That's amazing.
And I've got goosebumps now. Look,
you actually have.
That was that was so cool to do that. I was so happy that I did that. And I used to sort of go for the weekend. And I went home so happy.
NEC,
there's at Birmingham
Where
NEC.
you get the bus up with the store, is that, or did you go? Yeah,
actually, no. I went up in the car. We sort of stayed at a hotel and stuff like that. Went for 2 days. But I was so happy. I went home so happy with that.
Yeah.
And then I joined the army, and it was different after that. But but obviously for now, it's sort of learning that process again and sort of getting back into it. But yeah,
I think that is one of that is like that reaction where you just
spoke
about that is exactly what I'm talking about, and it's I think for me it boils down to when anyone ever asks me, it's like, oh, should I enter one? It's like, I think because the arena of what it is, it basically puts you outside your comfort zone. And I'd always say this, that is where you'll grow the most in anything. It's not just miniature painting.
I think before you even get to the competition as well, like even when I've got a piece that I'm working on at the minute for GD next year. And I remember this was a couple of weeks ago, sitting there painting it. And I literally had a thought in my head. I was like, oh, this is so good. I'm so happy with this. Like, and you have those moments before you even get there, because if you're doing better work than you had done previously. Yeah. And I was painting this, and I was doing like a bit of non-metallic on some fabric, this sort of like gold weave sort of thing. Something I've never tried before, and I thought it would look pants. But you kind of like unlock this thing that it was there all along, but you didn't know you could do it, because you've got to be in the right frame of mind to get that result out. Yeah. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. But I'd always advocate it. So I'm really, really glad that person who's commented has done that. Like, it's good. And the proof's in the pudding, like you said. You've noticed little things that you've already started to improve upon or getting better results through, again, putting yourself outside your comfort zone in that mindset of, this has got to be the best I can do. And that in itself is rewarding to you, as irrelevant of the competition or like that. That's the thing. And what I try and always convey is like, treat everything that you paint as if you're painting it for a competition with that mindset. Because that will definitely make you constantly be improving, even on your stuff for your army. Like, always.
My army's already taken long enough.
Yeah, I know. But that's the thing, and that's really what I would always advocate. So yeah.
Okay. This is a new segment which we're going to call Siege Studios Commission of the Week.
Yep. It's like a news report.
Yeah. We see so many mental projects here on a week in, week out basis, so much so that we can't even post them all.
Project.
Yeah.
So much so that we can't even post them all on socials. And I didn't want a wasted opportunity for some of those projects. I think me and James wanted to like flesh them out and talk about them a bit more. So we thought it'd be cool if now and then on the podcast, we pick a favourite project from the week and just have a bit of a chat about it.
Yeah.
Gets put on the old through the square window.
James, I don't know about you, but mine this week is definitely going to be the Death Skulls Warlord custom service character.
I knew this was going to be the one before we even decided to do this part of the show. We have the absolute privilege of bringing to life people's characters for their armies and like through custom service, and I think this is probably one of the most bonkers. I think the only other one that takes the biscuit, to use a pun, is going to be the Hive Tyrant controlled by an Inquisitor. Yeah. But other than that, this is right up there. So it's an Ork Death Skulls war boss that has had a soiree with some Necrons. So it is just absolutely mental.
Is that a bit of body work?
Yeah, we'll put it up obviously on the thing, but I've got it here in front of me as well. So it's like absolutely crazy. Obviously their skulls covered in blue war paint and covered in sort of blue, which is their lucky color. And yeah, it's just crazy. Wielding a Necron massive blade, and then obviously the legs being from Necron. I don't actually know. I think that's a Triarch Stalker legs. I think potentially. I think it is. I think that's what they are.
No idea.
Yeah,
I'm just going to say yes.
I think it's a Triarch Stalker. But yeah, this is the amazing thing that we love doing as a business is getting to work on these truly mental character commissions, whereby we create it, sculpt it, do all of that, and then obviously one of the painting team. It's the only thing where 2 team members get to work on something together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this one was sculpted by Simon and painted by Danny.
Yeah.
So big ups both of you.
Yeah,
amazing work.
They absolutely smashed it. Like, it is just insane, and
it's such a clever.
do you know? Like, I'm lost for words. That's
The
that.
bits
You know,
box,
like,
that's
I
what it's a
can
clever
imagine
use of.
a character being used in this context. So like the body of this conversion is Gazgol.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I wouldn't, looking at Gazgol, you don't, this is how creative the custom service team are, because I wouldn't look at Gazgol and think, oh, that's something that could be turned into something else.
know what?
It's such an iconic model on its own.
Necron legs, that's what he needs.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like orcs are known for looting stuff, and this guy has literally like
Yeah.
lived up to that stigma, like massively. But yeah, again, really, really great with the color usage on the model. Obviously, completely like Death Skulls. They have obviously bits of blue on them,
Yeah.
like war paint, like maybe they'll paint a cowling of a gun or like a weapon or something. But this guy, as a war boss,
Tattoos, yeah.
everything is blue
Yeah.
other than his flesh, which is amazing
great.
because, and the use of different colors of blue is quite nice as well. So like you've got darker and you've got lighter. And then he's got a bit of darker blue war paint as well. But yeah, just a really amazing project, which is, you know, from initial conversation all the way through to the finished painted article. It's just been absolute pleasure to create it. And again, like it's a shame. The one thing I really kind of like wish that I got to see was that reaction from the client when they first open the parcel and see this thing that's manifested from their mind, you know. So
This is not my vision at all.
so it's just yeah, it's a crazy thing, and yeah, just a really cool project.
Yeah. If you want to get your own commission, be it for custom service or an army project, character, anything like that, we have a bunch of different painting levels within the Siege umbrella for a variety of different budgets, project sizes, that sort of thing. So check the link in the episode's description if you want to get a commission. All the details will be down there. Topic for this week: why is everyone painting Grimdark?
Because it's the best. Next question.
This is something that we've skirted around on a few previous episodes, but I wanted to do like a whole thing talking about it because we've been asked a little bit about like our painting styles and how they've changed, or if we would consider doing other stuff. I came from doing like Grimdark stuff, and now it's very, very popular. And then you've got like the slap chop thing, and then you've got people doing all this weathered stuff, and you're starting to see it creeping in like competitions and things now. So I wanted to sort of unpack, one, why it's so popular. 2, is it actually easier? Because that's generally the sort of go-to starting point for doing Grimdark, is it's supposed to be easier to hide mistakes and such, and it's supposed to be more accessible. We're going to unpack whether that's actually true or not. And also, in addition, we're going to be talking about how it's changed over the years. And, you know, I don't want to say it's a bit of a fad, but maybe it's becoming a bit of a fad.
Oh, how dare you.
I think
don't think it's a
George
fad.
is
It's a fad
trying
that's
to cross a
lasted
line.
40 years, good man.
Well, Grimdark, I guess going back then, like base groundwork, Grimdark is sort of a artwork aesthetic that's going back to like Blanchitsu sort of style, right?
We can't talk about this without talking about the OG Grimdark. It is obviously John Blanche, and his artwork inspired obviously the aesthetic of 40k from the very early days, and obviously you have to acknowledge that and obviously pay credit to that. I mean, we've got some artwork up obviously in obviously on the podcast set done by John Blanche. I think one of the things that I've always liked about it is that it very much fits the lore and narrative and the desperation of the 40k universe, you know, in those early days. And I think that the painting style that's transpired from that is an amazing way of adding interest to miniatures that don't have that level of feel or vibe to them. You can just paint them. I mean, obviously the second ed stuff is very, very bright, as you can see. But then like there are other bits of artwork out there, you can't fully see it, but like the Epic 40,000 first cover artwork, you know, is something that it is still very bright, but it's way more gritty and way more grim dark, obviously, in that style. I personally don't see it as like a way of just excusing not painting stuff to a high level. I think that you can do lots of things with it, and it has the flexibility to be painted quite quickly to get something on the tabletop, and you can do all the things like even when I know we've spoken previously in the episode about competitions. I'm not going to recycle that and go into that again too much, but there have been some fantastic pieces recently. One specifically, there was this amazing Leviathan Dreadnought that was painted by an. We'll put it up, but I can't remember the name of the individual off the top of my head. But there was an amazing Leviathan Dreadnought that was painted in probably one of the best Grimdark styles I've ever seen, being frank. And And there was a lot of questions about white wine and all that stuff, which is absolutely insane considering how good the detail and the weathering was actually done on the model. But it
Sorry to interrupt. That was painted by John Margiotta.
that was it. And what John had done with that model was absolutely like immense, you know, and that shows you the scope of what that style
Can achieve.
We've seen obviously paints improve, like ways of doing weathering improve over the years, and all of that just contributes to that style and aesthetic being better and better and better and better.
Going a bit more granular with this then, what does grimdark mean to you if someone says that word?
Gritty, weathered, atmospheric, grimy, like
moody.
Moody. Yeah, it's very much like
because I think of it as everyone always throws like weathered and all that stuff in there, but I don't think of it in that way. I think of it as like a vibe thing in terms of this is a very hardcore universe where there are no rules and everyone's evil. Yeah. That's what grimdark means to me, not necessarily my Space Marine armor is covered in rust. Because this is where the contradiction happens with the lore for me. For example, if you think of chapters like Blood Angels, Emperor's Children, those legions, it's like very pristine, you know, very ornate. And then that doesn't really seem to make sense as to why it would then be covered in rust and haggard and beaten to death. Do you see what I mean?
I totally get it. I like when you go to a gallery and you walk around different like areas of the artwork and paintings and stuff. I see grimdark as exactly like one of those areas. It's a stylistic execution. It's like the mood aspect of it is very much, I think it's, if you were to split it into percentages, sorry to get a bit granular on it, but I'd say like the mood and vibe and feel of it is at least 50 to 60% of the actual way of doing it. I think that the way you convey that on the model when you paint it in that style is really important.
Because I think now, because of the painting style that's come up alongside sort of slap chop, I think that the painting style of grimdark and the universe established grimdark definitions have become a bit blurred, if that makes sense. Because I think when people say grimdark painting, I think personally that there is an assumption that it's going to be very, very high contrast, very, very heavily weathered models that were usually painted very, very fast, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
it's kind
I
of like
do.
become a painting term more than it's become a universe setting,
or like
if
a
that makes
mood,
sense.
or like a style within art or execute. I think ultimately, I think that you can use that terminology in whichever way you feel works best for your painting or your miniatures. But I do think there's like a pre-established, like with artwork in a gallery, there is a pre-established, like for example, the heavy metal style. That in itself is like in a gallery, an area of a gallery that has stuff painted in a certain like expressionism, or like for example stuff like that. I very much see grimdark in that way. And again, within that you can have something that's painted very quickly to show a mood, you know, or very loads of time investment and painted to such high refinement and quality of execution. So I get what you're saying about it getting blurred a little bit. I think because ultimately miniature painting is art, you know, and I think you have all levels of different execution within each of those fields. You can have an heavy metal style painted model that maybe doesn't have the refinement of an heavy metal model, and it's still the heavy metal style. And the same way you can have a grimdark model that is done very quickly, that is slap chop, and it is weathered with a sponge really quickly or with oils chucked all over it or whatever, and it has that feel.
That's a fair point. You know, I think that's a good comparison with the heavy metal thing, because you can say a model was painted in the box art style, but it's not necessarily painted nearly as refined as an actual box art model.
There's nothing factually wrong with someone saying, well, I paint in heavy metal style, and maybe the refinement isn't there yet for it, but it's still painted in that style.
Yeah, but the heavy metal style that you see on the boxes, I think that's an advertisement type of style of painting.
Yeah.
They're not going to paint it grimdark.
Well, there has been a bit of weathering done on heavy metal style.
I don't think they're necessarily going to paint, you know, Space Marines on box art in a grimdark fashion, because it
obscures too much of the detail of the miniature.
You know, they or any of models, you don't really see.
You say that, but some of the old Forge Worlds. So a lot of the Forge World, and if the Forge World or the specialist design team, you know, the painting team that are now that obviously are part of that or that are doing that, they're painting a lot of this Forge World stuff now, very similar to, well, exactly the same in the sense of execution as the heavy metal or as the OG heavy metal team. That makes sense, doing all the plastic kits and stuff.
But going back a few years, there was a very distinct style difference between Forge World and the Citadel stuff.
It was so different. Yeah.
And the thing is, you look at stuff like the Death Corps of Krieg and stuff like that. You look at some of the Necromunda stuff. You look at that was very much painted, and even the original Horus Heresy stuff, very much painted in a more historical scale modeling approach. Like,
Yeah.
so some really good original Forge World like painting guidebooks that they used to produce that showed how to do it. It was almost looking at some of the books my granddad used to show me when he was doing Airfix kits,
Yeah.
like, and doing scale modeling. They're very similar comparison, like the weathering styles and things like that.
I remember those books. They were great. I remember having like a Tamiya like masterclass
Yes, I had a
book.
few of
Yeah,
those.
yeah. It's very, very much like that. But as I was saying, like, so I know what you're saying about you wouldn't have advertising, but back in the day on the original Forge World stuff, was a marketing asset. You know, the pictures of those miniatures, but they were painted in that style. You know,
So going back then, because you guys are from the sort of original era of like the second ed part of the hobby.
yeah.
Back
remind me of my
then,
age.
if someone had said Grimdark, would
Yeah.
that have meant a different thing than it does now, or was that a term that wasn't even used yet?
I don't really recall much Grimdark painting at all back then.
So in White Dwarf, John Blanche used to have sections about his painting in White Dwarf, and specifically one of the periods of time when it was most prevalent was when Mordheim was around. John's massively into Mordheim, and there were articles in White Dwarf that really featured a lot of his work doing Mordheim stuff, and the painting of it. So I think that's kind of like where it first got a lot of prevalence. Obviously, his artwork has always been Grimdark that he's produced for like boxes and like covers and Kodak and all those different things. However, miniature wise, that's where I remember from being a child and being young, where I first started seeing that style of painting, and it wasn't on 40k. The first time I saw it on 40k stuff was actually when Inquisitor was released, and that used to be obviously a much bigger scale skirmish game, and there were like miniatures that were in there that he'd done, those lovely paintings in those desaturated sepia and amber tones and stuff like that. For those characters from Inquisitor. So that's kind of like what the articles and stuff that I first saw Grimdark. And for me, as someone growing up, for me, it is exactly what I've said. I thought it was a different way of painting it. It didn't mean that it was painted to a lesser quality or anything, because I don't think that was not considered as much back then, but I don't think it was just something that was as prevalent back then as it is now, like the quality of execution.
I think perhaps for second edition as well, you think back to second edition, everything was so bright and colourful. Yeah. And I think my sort of younger years of painting, I think that Grimdark was something different. It was more weathered things. So like on the boots, you'd perhaps put a bit of dust coloured, from the ground colour on the boots, and that would be about as far as you'd go with it, because you wanted these really bright colours to stay popping. And it dabbled a little bit in chipped paintwork and things like that kind of. But again, that's weathering again as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, but I think that's what I was saying. Like for me, like
it's very different.
Those original Mordheim box art models, the original Mordheim articles and stuff in White Dwarf. That I never looked at that and went, "Oh yeah, it's not painted as well as this other stuff."
No,
I'd just be like, "It's painted differently." Like, that's kind of like.
Have you ever dabbled with any of the sort of Grimdark, the new age sort of Grimdark speed painting stuff?
I haven't. No, being
Death
honest,
Guard.
no.
I paint a lot. I love Death Guard. So like when I was getting back into painting, that's all I painted. So, and painting Death Guard, you can get away with loads. You just throw loads of muck all over it, and it they look great. So, but I mean, they're a good way to practice all your chipping. And I think you said before, use sponges and things like that. It was great fun. Even with the slap chop, I suppose. Use the what they call contrast paints to actually paint more or less the whole model, and then weathered it as well on top of that, just for throwing it together a quick unit. Brilliant.
But you see how, like, even the way you describe that feels like you've not spoken at all whatsoever about like the quality you're trying to execute. All those things that you said are the mood you're trying to create, or the feel or vibe you're trying to create on that model.
Just to clarify a point I made earlier, I don't actually think it's necessarily easier to paint in that style. I think it's just a different thing. I think it's more accessible and it's definitely faster. And I think it takes a different sort of a more like macro level looking at the paint job than the micro. So we've spoken about how you view army painting as like the spectacle and the end result. Yeah. I think you've got to have an eye for the big picture when you're painting that style rather than an eye for the nuanced, small, tiny details, which I think is a different skill in itself.
Yeah. The difficulty is with going grimdark on anything, is knowing when to stop.
Yeah.
There's a fine line of, that's perfect, or that's it, it's sport now because I put too much on it. And getting that level of rust right or grime or blood spatter or whatever part of grimdark that you're trying to achieve, too much is just, it it doesn't look right.
Well, take for example the model you're painting at the moment, Azak. Okay?
Yeah.
The artwork for that is like super vibrant, like the green glow, like all the all the colors. They're super vibrant. But strip away the colors and the saturation. When you look at that artwork, the mood or the feel of it feels evil. It feels dark. It feels, and you wouldn't describe the colors on there as dark, but you describe.
But I think that is the mood of that piece is created by like the OSL and the lighting effects on it, because I mean, like you say, it just looks so sinister.
Yeah.
And I think as well, it's the angle that he's viewed from, which is sort of
downward,
like upward shot.
Yeah.
It's great, and trying to sort of achieve that on what I'm painting, it's going to be tricky, but you just got to give it a go, haven't you? Just go mad with colour, or mental with colour, or whatever it is. But I think there's definitely a fine line of knowing when to stop adding the dirt, the grime, the rust, the blood spatter, and all the rest of it.
Coming full circle a little bit, I'll segue that into then. There's one of my favourite aesthetics is the sort of dark, grimdark, what to me means grimdark style, sans any weathering. So I'm thinking very specifically, for example, you might remember this, James, a long while ago, Siege done a commission for a Kazakin kill team.
Yeah.
And they were all painted in this really dark tactical armor, and they had these like glowing lenses everywhere.
Yeah.
And that to me was like the perfect embodiment of how grimdark could be done in a box art painting style.
But again, that's mood.
Exactly.
It's not the painting. I mean, obviously they are painted to a high standard, but it's the conveyance of the mood of the piece or of the unit or whatever you want to, or whatever size.
If you think back to, like you were saying, 40 years ago, the artist creating grimdark for 40k. But if you go back even further and think about the Alien set of movies.
Geiger stuff.
That says grimdark to me as well.
Yeah,
but
that's
completely different.
No, you're very right.
Like when you see the alien ships and it's all that dark and there's a bit of mist. I think it's so but that, again, that's mood.
It's
isn't
mood.
It?
Yeah. That's exactly.
It's how to capture that on a little blob of grey plastic, isn't it?
Exactly. I'm so glad you mentioned Geiger and all the stuff that he produces, because like that is exactly. They're two very different grim dark things,
but they're both perfect. But
it's the mood that is conveyed with the way that it's done, And I think that for me is how I would look at and how I always think and look at stuff. I don't look at something that's painted that way and go, "That's painted like rubbish." I don't think that, because that can't be the case factually, because people have won one of, if not the most prestigious painting competition in the world, painting a piece in that way.
I love the weathered look of stuff as well. Like, I just see it as not an umbrella for everything within Grimdark, if that makes sense. I'd love to see a push for more people doing the Grimdark style with not necessarily no weathering, but like less weathering, or rather than having like over the top crazy rust, maybe it's just paint chips and things like that. I would love to see a big push for that, because I see them as like two things that can live in the same camp. And I think that because of the recent popularity of the painting style in the sense of speed painting, I think that now it's gotten to the point where someone says grimdark, you just have this image in your head of a space marine airbrushed really, really aggressively with really, really high contrast, covered in rust, paint chipped.
I suppose there's that other thing as well. When you think of grimdark, you see there's a lot of sort of people just saying, well, you cover the whole model in all this sort of brown muck and then wait a little while and then just wipe it off, and then that's grimdark.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's obviously a different style.
I always look back at like the Inquisitor models, so they're a really good place to look at for the style. Like all the artwork, like in John's book that he made a lot of supplementary books, like art books for Inquisitor. And they're a bit hard to get hold of, but you can find them on eBay and stuff. But those art books, it's got all of his drawings and all the sketches of like 40k. If we're specifically talking about 40k and applying it to 40k, I mean, Mordheim is a great example of it as well. But you have a look at those Inquisitor models and they're not painted in that manner with stuff being slapped all over them. They're still painted in what I guess you would consider a non-grimdark way, but they still have that grimdark feel because of that mood. Because of the mood. You know what I mean? So it's a real funny one. But yeah, so I think that it's something that has so much flexibility, probably more so than other painting styles or feels. Like, again, you're quite confined. Like, the one thing about the heavy metal style is that, yes, it's very high end, it's very refined, it's very smooth, it's sharp, clean, all those things which are needed for a marketing asset or marketing image. But I think there's more confinement within that style. You can add subtle weathering on, you can do subtle things to it. typically, I mean, some of the models, I could only say there's a few models in my opinion from like the Age of Sigmar range. Like if you look at Nagash, for example, Nagash is still painted in that heavy metal style, but I think that's one of only a few models in the older stuff. More recent, you've got a lot of the vampire stuff, a lot more
flesh eater
quartz.
Yeah.
I say a lot of that newer stuff is still painted in that heavy metal style. I think it's only been in the last couple of years you've seen that more grimdark mood on box art heavy metal style models in those ranges or factions. But then if you think like earlier than that, Nagash was one of the first models for me from early Age of Sigmar models that were released, where you look at it and go, that's evil as anything. And it conveys that mood and that grim, dark feel, but it's painted in that other style. I think there's a bit more confinement within heavy metal style for doing that, getting that mood across. I think you do have to go more in the way of execution in what we've been speaking about with like weathering and
So if
rust
you think you can convey, if you can get across what you're trying to achieve with less on the miniature, you think that's better than just going ham at it?
I don't know. Like I think that's an experiment.
What you say, because I
don't think it's a better or worse thing.
No, I agree.
Necessarily.
I agree.
Yeah, because what you might say, well, I think I've conveyed, the mood of that miniature with minimal grim darkness,
as in the style of execution.
But someone else might pick it up and think, grim dark to me says you should perhaps add a bit more to that.
But then that's interpretation.
Yeah,
that's I always say this.
Your interpretation of mood is different to my interpretation.
Exactly.
Of
No,
mood.
you're right. No, but you're 100% right.
Yeah.
Like, and that I always say this. Like when you paint a miniature, you're tricking the eye. That model's plastic.
Yeah.
Like everything you do to it is to convey mood, like the feel, the vibe, the style, like the weight,
shape, shine, and shadow.
Well, exactly.
Put that in your pocket and keep it.
It's exactly that. Like that's the thing. You are selling someone a falsehood. Like you're tricking the eye. They're not leather. Those pouches on that waist aren't leather.
I have to admit, I do love seeing, especially. I mean, I don't paint many tanks because I'm rubbish at it. But I do love seeing like the vehicles painted and they look really nicely
Haggard.
weathered. They look battered. And you think that actually looks realistic.
Real, yeah. Well, that's where the old Forge World stuff was amazing because it literally was painted how a real life Tiger or Challenger or it's painted in the same.
Is that because do you think when the Forge World stuff was more or less sort of starting out, it was more about Tamiya kits, Airfix kits, and that sort of style of painting was very much more on a realistic level.
Yeah. There's a lot more realism with it. Like in some of the early Forge
sort of inspired that sort of
100%. And I think like the thing is also I think it's also the grimdark style is actually more suited to certain models than others. And I know that might be a bit of a personal take.
No,
on
I'll
it.
agree with that.
I think like if you imagine painting, I know we've seen box art quality heavy metal style, like the Death Corps of Krieg or the Imperial Guard Veterans box, amazing models. But if you look at the Forge World Death Corps of Krieg, the original ones, and then you look at I think the painting style on the Forge World ones suits the model better than and then it's not to take away from the absolutely amazing paint job on the Death Corps of Krieg plastic kit because they're phenomenal. But I just think the mood that is conveyed by the other style on those older Death Corps suits that faction way more. So I think when you're
100% agree. I think the paint job on the resin Death Corps Krieg that I think is still available, the paint job on that is like one of my favorite Warhammer paint jobs, full stop. But then it was just because of maybe it's just a vibe thing because I don't think that objectively it's the most well executed paint job. It's not my favorite in that sense, but just like vibe check, I think it suits the models so well.
Yeah, because of their narrative, because of the harshness of the world they come from, the penance that they're paying for what they've done against the Imperial, before, all that kind of stuff. Like this is why, and sorry to go a bit deep on it.
Look at that.
Yeah, they're
nice,
phenomenal. They're really cool.
They look like they've been in the trenches for a while.
Exactly, and that fits. Yeah. And I would say, even though they're painted not cleanly, but they're painted in a very
cleanly, but in a dirty style.
Well, exactly that. They're painted in a way but it's fitting with lore, fitting with the vibe of the thing, and also I would say they're grimdark, but it's still a marketing asset.
That's a key word as well there, lore.
Yeah.
It's like knowing the lore of the thing that you're painting is so important.
Would you have pristine orcs?
Well, no, of course you wouldn't.
Like
a crazy thing to ask.
Yeah, well, this is the thing.
I think that's why, as you're painting the miniature or beforehand, is just read about them a little bit just to get a feel of the mood of what you're painting.
That's why I always say,
Plus
like,
the setting as well. Where are you putting these things?
Exactly that. That's why I literally always say that, like, the lore is part of the painting. It's not the 40k or Age of Sigmar. The models are not soulless. They have loads of stuff written about them that defines what, like, there's a reason why that model has that piece of detail. There's a reason why that model has this or this. That for me is really important and integral to the painting. And I think if you don't pull from that branch on the tree, I think you're missing the trick with the models you're painting.
It's a lot like, I think a lot of Space Marines work in admin because they don't seem to have much battle damage on them. So.
No, that's brilliant.
That depends, like you say, setting though, because if you imagine, thinking like old art, like 30k artwork especially, if you imagine like the Blood Angels Legion, like all assembled on the homeworld, like ready to go on mission, right? There's thousands of them and they're all stood there like in their formations and whatever. If they all were stood there and they was battered and beaten to shreds, that would be a bit out of context bizarre. But because they're all like pristine and ready to go, it's like, I'm thinking like Star Wars, like all the clone troops on Camino. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. Whereas you think of a horde of orcs that are just clambering into haggard, weird ships to go into space, they'd all be like...
or a bunch of Death Corps of Krieg in a trench. Setting is relevant, isn't it? It's definitely relevant.
It is. I think the lore conveys the mood, and that's the best way for me to explain it. I think the lore conveys the mood of the miniatures you're painting. I think that, as I said, if you don't pull from that, even a little bit, I think the models don't have inherently the soul of what they are. Does that make sense? And that's the best way for me to explain it.
And being sympathetic, like coming full circle again, like being sympathetic to the model and like the pose as well. Because if you imagine like a Space Marine that's just stood there in like a stoic pose versus, an assault intercessor that's like charging, like screaming face, like you can imagine one in the midst of a battle and he might have a lot more damage and things going on. Yeah. Whereas one is, stood there rank and file in the back of a rhino.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're 100% right. But just to put a bottle top in it, like, I think Grimdark Star is like something that has a massive scope of what you can do with it, and I don't think that it should be stigmatized with it being this thing that's like, oh, it's just easy, you just slap some stuff on it. I don't think that's the case.
It's been put in a speed painting camp, I think.
See, now part of me, I really want to see a Space Marine in the admin role now. I want to see him at a desk with doing some sort of admin.
Get the custom service team.
Yeah, there's that one from Space Hulk, the one that's dead, the Terminator, sitting in the seat. You just cut his head off.
He had a big weekend.
Yeah. Typewriter on the,
Yeah.
If you're a long-term listener of the podcast, you'll know how important it is to have the right tools to aid you in your painting. And if there's one piece of equipment that I could never live without, it's my Onyx lamp from Native Lighting. It doesn't matter what brush or paints you have if you can't see what you're doing in the first place. The Onyx is the perfect lamp for miniature painting because its super bright 2,200 lumen LEDs cast soft and diffused light on your models without any harsh shadows. And its daylight balanced color temperature of 6500K gives you the confidence that the colors you are painting are accurate. As someone with a very small hobby desk, by far my favorite feature though is its articulating arm, which clamps to the side of your desk, maximizing your workspace. It's also super adjustable so you can sit comfortably in the perfect painting position without sacrifice. It also folds up into a compact shape, which is great if you like to travel to paint with your friends. To upgrade your setup and order yours now, head to siegestudios.co.uk/shop or head to the link in this episode's description. Question of the week time. Thank you everyone for submitting your questions for Question of the Week. If you have a question that you would like us to answer on a future episode of Paint Perspective, please leave it in the comments down below on YouTube. And this week we have a question from Spaced Crusader who says, how do I stop being a hobby butterfly? I have so many half-painted minis in my drawer of doom. Little projects that I get excited about, then paint part of them and leave. I resonate with this a lot, actually. So actually, much like Space Crusader, I would love to know this because I also have a drawer of doom.
Don't call your drawer a drawer of doom because that just says terror straight away. Call it your drawer of
potential.
A drawer of potential. And actually,
I just imagine it sitting at my hobby desk. It's like, oh, should we get something from the...
I don't know. If you've got stuff that's half finished that you haven't done for a while, go back to it and have a little look.
That just makes me feel. Do you remember I can't remember what the film was where they put the things in the cupboard and they come to life? Like you put the models in the. I don't know what film it's.
Small Soldiers.
Well, Small Soldiers is a good example, but there was a film.
It's good, but it's not right.
No, it's where they basically put the figurines in a cupboard and they closed it, locked it, opened it, and they came to life.
I don't think anyone's ever made that movie yet.
Someone will comment on what the name of the
Toy
film
Story.
is. It's not Toy Story. It's an older
Toy
film.
Story 2.
No, it's not that.
Toy Story 3.
It's definitely not Toy Story. But
Toy Story
it just
4.
makes me think of the drawer. You open it and the models like just jump out and like are attacking you, going, paint me. Like that's exactly it. But no. I think being a butterfly, to me, what that says is that you're just trying to experiment and just try loads of different things. And I think that what as a motivational thing, what you're getting from each of those is a small hit of dopamine for like, oh, I wanted to try this, I wanted to try this, I wanted to try this. Really, maybe what it is that you need to either lock the drawer of doom and just focus on one thing,
potential,
or draw potential, or you want to or have a few of those models on the go at any one time, and rather than switch to something new from the drawer of potential, you just switch to one of the other models and push that one further on from the previous one.
I kind of see painting a model like a hill.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're at the bottom of the hill to start with. You've got all the excitement of looking up at the hill and thinking, I'm going to get to the top of that.
Yep.
You start painting, and then the slog starts.
Yeah.
And then before you've reached the summit, on the fun bit on the way down,
you see the other mountain.
Think,
oh, there's a hill over there.
there's a new hill.
There's a bigger hill.
Yeah. Oh, look at that hill. Yeah. And then you just think, well, okay, I'm not really motivated anymore to carry on and finish one. So you put this down, and then you, like you say, you start you're at the bottom of the next hill.
Yeah.
And then you end up in this sort of vicious cycle of getting excited about doing a model. You start it, and then you can't push past a certain point on each one. And then you end up with all these half-finished things.
I don't think it's, if it's just, because I have a drawer of doom, but it's purely like its entire purpose is like painting exercises, or like ideas I had for a competition piece, especially, where I get halfway through it and I realize it's not working out the way I thought it would. And rather than investing another 150 hours in this, I'd rather spend it elsewhere. Yeah. So I'll just shelve that as a learning experience. I think if you treat it in that way, then it's a good thing. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
If it's causing you to never finish anything and your goal in your head is, okay, I want to finish a model, then I can see why it's an issue. But I think that probably comes back to what we said at the start of the episode about the whole pile of potential, like buying and collecting loads of stuff. Is like maybe you need to nip it in the bud and just finish one thing to completion to get the satisfaction
breaking that
from
cycle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because then you start getting into your head, I'm going to start this. I'm never going to finish it.
Yeah.
So you end up that's already in your head somewhere.
But if it's made it into the drawer, you're probably not that bothered about finishing it in the first place. So
possibly.
Do you know what I mean?
I think
is it necessarily a bad thing?
You get the hit of what you need from that execution. Like
it served its purpose.
You know, I think it's for me.
Are they fine cast models? Because I do that every fine cast.
I've got a perfect example. I painted a squad ages ago for competition, enjoyed it massively. Like, right, I'm going to do another one. I listened to Hell's Reach by Aaron Dembski-Bowden. It's one of my favourite audiobooks or books about Black Templars and Grimaldus. I thought, right, I'm going to do a squad. I've done my research, listened to all the book, write down all the characters, all the individual little details, made the squad, blah, blah, blah. Started painting through it for as a competition entry. And then I was like, I've had that hit. I've painted 30% most of the models in that squad of 6 models at, Kador and all the different characters, Primus, etc. And then I was like, right, I've done it. I've basically made the squad from the book. I'm done. And that hit was done for me.
Yeah.
It's sitting there half finished in the shelf on the plinth, etc. Blah, blah.
But what I find helps is something else that you really love. So if when I'm painting, I got my iPad next to me. I think, what is going to help me get through this? So I put like comedy shows on, and as you're painting, you're laughing.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're kind of associating the painting process
with having a good time.
That's a really good idea, yeah.
And things like that. So, and of course, you're sort of watching that and a bit of painting, and you're watching.
See, I listen to metalcore while I paint, so I associate painting with people screaming at me. Painting with sadness.
That's probably the moment you open the drawer and it makes that noise. It's like,
bit of flash metal.
Yeah. But no, I think that you really got to think about when you're doing stuff like that, like what are you actually painting that thing for? Is it to finish the model, or is it just to get that hit of, I wanted to paint a glowing axe, or I wanted to paint this bit of armor, or have you learned the lesson or got your ability to where you want it to be on that piece? I think
I've just thought of an answer for this. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go crazy.
Uh-oh. I would stop painting whole models when you get the itch to paint something and just paint a bit.
Yeah.
So if you go, I really want to paint this model, and I'm especially excited to paint the power axe, just get the bit, paint that power axe, you've scratched the itch, you're satisfied, move on to the next thing, because you've not then wasted a whole model.
Goals.
You've not then got the because you've completed it.
Yeah.
If you've just painted the power axe on a whole model, the model is unfinished. If you've just painted that bit on its own, you finished it. The whole project is done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Smaller
really good way.
goals,
It's smaller hills. Yeah,
Small, yeah.
Speed
grassy
bumps.
knolls.
Speed bumps, yeah.
Speed bumps, yeah, sure. Whatever.
Grassy
yeah,
knoll.
Some
grassy
small
knoll.
bumps.
That's a whole different conversation. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's
Tumulus.
yeah, I
Do you
think
know what a
that's.
tumulus is? Anyone?
I don't know what a tumulus
Bullshit.
is.
Nah, that's right.
What is a tumulus?
A tumulus, I think it is like a
Get this right,
Roman burial ground, isn't it? A
Oh, I mean,
tumulus.
I mean,
It's
that's
like
definitely-
It's a hill. It's a
that's-
big.
that's
do you
fit-
remember the film Coneheads? It's kind of like looks like that. Well, I could be completely wrong. Someone's going to say anyway, aren't they?
I think you just got to set yourself smaller goals to hit that fix that you need. And really, I think it boils down to if you absolutely love the model, I think that in itself will be the thing that makes you paint it fully. Like you, for example, when you've done that, what's the
Harbinger of Decay.
Like when you get a model that you absolutely love,
Yeah.
I think that love for the miniature or love for the sculpt or the details, I think that is what, rather than it being a hill, I see it as a flight of stairs. And I know, sorry to use some weird analogy, but that's what makes you go on every step, those little things on the miniature that make you get to the summit.
Yeah,
you know?
there's lots of little details that you're interested in doing and you want to get to the end result. Maybe you just haven't found the miniature for you
Yeah,
yet.
potentially. Yeah, that could be it. It's a bit like a Dear Deirdre column, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Hobby Hacks, this is our closing tradition on the podcast as your reward for listening to us waffle on for an hour and some change about nonsense of miniature painting. We have a hobby hack that you can implement into your painting right now. James normally does these, but I've got one, I think.
Well, he's already given us one, Ribena, today.
That's true.
Just paint with Ribena.
I definitely did not say that.
He did.
That's
He
what
said
I
that.
heard.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
I'm going to try it.
My hobby hack is if you are looking for some transfers for your miniatures, sometimes, I don't know if you guys have ever been in this position, there'll be a transfer that I really, really like, but it's the wrong color. And oftentimes you can't find it in the color that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. I've got a little 2-in-1 brush exercise / solution for this. The transfer you like, apply it to your miniature, and you've now got a little tiny painting by numbers canvas. Get the paints that the colors that you want it to be. And this is great for your brush control. Just practice painting within the lines as if it was like a painting by numbers over the transfer, the color that you actually want it to be. You're going to improve your brush skill and you're going to get the color that you were looking for. And it's going to look like it was free-handed on rather than it being a transfer.
Miniature stencil.
Cheating.
Miniature stencil.
Hacking on, brilliant.
Yeah,
Good
exactly.
idea.
That's spot on.
I do that all the time, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have you used them on?
Many years ago, when we didn't really have many transfers knocking about for the Ultramarines and Space Wolves and things, just used to, practice like your freehand. Paint over a few.
Yeah.
And then, go at it on the other ones. Just freehand it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, on that note, thank you everyone for listening to this week's episode of Paint Perspective. If you would like to support the show, you can do so in a number of ways. We've got our Patreon and we've also got the Siege Studio shop where you can grab some awesome merch. Don't forget to use code POD10 for 10% discount and a free sticker pack. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next week.